Be Rob inspired. Welcome back to another amazing episode. I am super excited to have with us today Demetrius Doss. Now, I will tell you, I heard Demetrius speak. I was blown away. The passion, the purpose of his mission, and why he's speaking. But I do want to rewind the clock a little bit. Demetrius is a very accomplished athlete. He played for the Marshall University under two amazing quarterbacks, actually Heisman finalists Byron Leftwich and Chad Pennington. But this story that I want Demetrius to share with us today has nothing to do with his accomplishments in athletics. It has more to do with an incident that happened July 18th, 2020, really in the most unlikely of scenarios and situations. It actually happened at church. Specifically the Grace Covenant Church in Fairfax County, Virginia.
Yeah.
And when you hear this story, and I want you to picture and bring yourself to the details that he's going to describe, but also I think what I'm most impressed with you and your life and what you and Kelly have done from this experience is how you've shared this and you've taken this adversity that nearly cost you your life. And I won't spill all the details because I'm going to let Demetrius go into that. But you've taken this horrific incident in the most unlikely places and you've transformed that into a gift and into opportunity, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So, Demetrius, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, man. I'm excited. My man. Glad to be in Missouri. First time, so... Brother, I'm excited. Anytime I get an opportunity to share the story and encourage and inspire people, man, like that's what life is about for me, man.
Why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a backdrop on, A, what happened, and kind of where you and Kelly were, where you were at in your life, and paint that picture of that day for us so they can really get an idea of what happened. And then we'll go deeper with how you two have taken that, transformed it, and used it as a positive thing to inspire others.
Absolutely. So it was in the middle of COVID when everybody was still kind of like, what is this thing? It's the worst case of cooties mankind has ever seen. Everybody had the ninja mask on. And so it was July 18th. And this was the first in-person event that our church was having post-COVID.
Okay.
And so for me and my wife, we had been members of, not official members. We had been going to Grace Covenant for like maybe 4 years. But because of my schedule, travel, and at the time I was coaching like 3 different travel AAU basketball teams, like, bro, I had no weekends.
Yeah.
And so COVID hit, obviously, no gyms were open, shut down everything. So sitting there, my wife was like, well, I guess God is now like, yo, it's time for y'all to get serious and get committed and go to Grace. And so we was like, all right, perfect. July 18th, we went there. Man, it was a normal day. It was 97 degrees outside, and it was beautiful. And me and my wife it was like, we were starting to get used to not having anything to do on the weekends because of COVID. So we was like, man, it was a beautiful day. And so we go to this new members class. Everything was great, fine, so it's literally about maybe 5 minutes left, and we had been there, like the new members class is like maybe like 6 hours, because they really want you to understand what they believe and do, all that good stuff.
And give us an idea how many new members are at this event? How many people?
So typically they would have it in a small classroom.
Okay.
Again, because of COVID and the whole mess, and it was like, hey, since only 18 of us, we're going to go in the sanctuary so people are spread out, so no one is like fearful.
Gotcha.
So it's 18 of us, and our sanctuary seats about maybe 2,500. So we go there, everything is fine. And I remember I turned and I looked at the clock, and it was 2:55 p.m. on the dot. And this guy comes into church, and just the moment I saw him, just flags my alarm, like something was just not right. And I looked at him, and I'm like, man, it's way too hot to be wearing that leather coat out here. And I was just like, nah, something ain't passing the smell test. And so me and my wife just stood, and we were like, he was kind of like just looking around and eyeing around for like a few minutes, and me and my wife was just like, This cat is just way too odd. It's way too odd.
That's a new member deal. So did you know this guy?
Never
Did
saw
he
him
look
before.
Familiar?
So,
Okay.
so I had saw him when we had a break. I went to the car. That's how I knew how hot it was, because my dash was like 97 degrees. And I saw him kind of pacing outside, but he had on our church shirt. So I was like,
Okay.
maybe he's thinking about something. He's got a problem and he's kind of pacing, but nothing like said this dude was not well.
Yeah.
So I didn't know.
Okay.
So I remember that's the guy who I saw out there, and then he just starts yelling at the assistant pastor that was teaching the class.
In your session.
In the session. And so talking to the other members there, they thought it was part of like a skit. Like,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they kind of was just kind of like, they thought it was part of it until he started cussing and dropping F-bombs.
That's not right.
And then people was like,
Something's wrong.
nah, something's wrong. But everyone was still like, what the heck? By this point, my wife is elbowing me like, yo, you need to do something. Because we could both tell, like this cat didn't come up in here to debate theology or talk. Like, no, he came, he had some type of intention. So he had a pull stick in his right hand. He starts dropping F-bombs, and then he starts charging at our assistant pastor. So we have the theater seating where like you come into the church and you kind of like walk down. So the pastor, assistant pastor Sean, he's at the podium at the base, and he's just kind of sitting there, and he's kind of like praying like, God, you gotta do something, because this cat, like,
Charging him.
he's charging at me. He's getting closer, like. So by this point, again, my wife has nudged me. I had already made the declaration to myself. I'm like, I got it. And so I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, when I'm in his blind spot, I'm gonna rush him. I don't know what he's trying to do, but he's not here with good intentions. So I saw that he had the right pull stick. So when he swung it, it broke because Pastor Sean blocked it. By then, people are like, still, no one else got up. By this point, in my mind, I'm like, yo, it's time. Like, I'm just built different. So I grabbed him to make sure that he couldn't. In my mind, I'm just thinking, fight. I grabbed him, but I didn't know that in his left hand, he had a hunting knife.
Oh, man.
So I didn't even see that. So when I grabbed him, the first stab wound I sustained was to my left quad, but I didn't feel it until they were prepping me for surgery. So that one was like, again, like he stabbed me once, and I kind of just threw him away. Like I wanted to get him away from Pastor Sean and everybody. Because in my mind, I'm just like, yo, why are you here with a pool stick?
Yeah.
Like, homie, this is a new members class. What are you doing? So when he fell on the ground, he was like struggling to get up. And I kind of just like stood over top of him, and I'm like, and I said, homie, we in church, what are you doing? Like, what? And the moment I said that, I'm looking, and he's like flailing, like if you ever, like when you were little and you would take an insect and put it on his back and he couldn't move, and it's like, that's what this cat was doing. I was like, what's that shiny thing? I'm thinking it's like, what's that shiny thing in his hand? Like, yo, does this dude have a knife? And the moment I said that, something hit my leg. I was like, man, what is that? Like I didn't scream. It didn't feel like, it just felt like someone hit my leg. Just kind of looked, and I looked down, and I had on some all-white Vans. And in half a second, my all-white Vans went from all-white to like brick red.
He stabbed you.
He stabbed me.
Again.
And now, in my mind, this was the first one. I didn't know in my mind, because I didn't feel the one in my left quad. So I'm like, I look and I'm like, what? And then I hear this sound. I'm like looking at it, and the hunting knife that he had was so sharp that it completely severed my main artery. And the first scream I hear was my wife. Okay. And I'm just like,
I can't imagine.
And God was like, he literally shut my right leg down. Like I couldn't move it. Like it just stopped. But I couldn't, it's not like I was like, oh my God. Like I had only knew I had been stabbed because of the result. There was no pain. I can't move my leg. And so by this point, everyone's screaming, it's chaotic.
Is he still on the ground?
So he's still on the ground trying to get up. And now I'm trying to hobble away up our ramp. So by this point, now it is full-blown chaos. And so the chief of police for Fairfax County was sitting right behind me. So I guess his training kicked in, and he's now trying to coax the assailant to follow him so he can get him out of the sanctuary, to subdue him, et cetera, et cetera. And so he does that, and he goes up the ramp, and the assailant now is rushing him. So he done forgot about me, and at this time I'm watching him go up, and I'm still.
Are you still standing?
I'm still standing, and I'm trying to move. Now, here is the amazing part that, people want to be chosen, but God doesn't always tell you what you're going to be chosen for. So for me in that moment, I was blessed that there was a former ER doctor that was in that new members class.
Wow.
There was a current registered nurse that was in that new members class. There was a flight attendant who had training on how to create tourniquets out of clothing in that new members class. And the chief of police was sitting right behind me. So it's like, if God's like, B-Rob, listen, you gonna take one for the team. I'm gonna put you in a bad spot. But tell me who you want there. God, I need a cop. I need a doctor. You know what I mean? Like it was.
I got chills just hearing you say
it. It was ordained that it had to be me, and it had to be at that moment. And so people are now like jumping over pews, and everyone is trying to get me to get down. And the entire time that this has happened, I'm not thinking about I got stabbed. I'm not thinking about anything but, God, I thought I had more time. At the time, I was 40.
Are you thinking about your boys?
I'm thinking about
your wife.
I'm thinking about like God, who's going to coach these 30 kids? Half of them are in single parent households. Like 75% of these kids, I'm the most positive male role model that they have. God, I got 2 boys who are alpha males. How is my wife, who's like Mother Teresa, going to deal with 2 little Kanye West type dudes? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just thinking God, man, I thought I would have like more dates with my wife, like more vacation. Like I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about, oh my God, am I going to heaven or hell? I know where I'm going, so I'm not tripping. It's just like, you don't think you're going to be in a jam like that at 40.
That's okay. So 40.
Yeah.
40 years old.
40 years old.
Which you ask anybody, 40 years old, you got time. You got time. You're 40. You're halfway. You got plenty of time. And here you are.
Here I am.
Bleeding out.
Not just feeling like I'm dying, because I know it, because life is leaving, and it's an eerie feeling when you know life is leaving your body. But when you see it, like most people, like when you get sick, you have like food poisoning or you eat something bad, you're like, oh my God, baby, take care of me, I'm about to, like, everyone feels like you get a fever, you feel like you're about to die. Like right. The first time that most people got like COVID, oh my gosh, I can't, you feel like you've never seen yourself, bro. Like, I'm feeling it and my eyes are not lying to me. Big homie, this is it. It is the most eerie feeling when you have to tell yourself, D, you had a good life, man. Bro, you made it out of South Philly. Bro, single parent household most of your life. Your kids don't even know what that's like. You live in the suburbs now. Like, you did a lot. Look at all these kids. Man, you did a good job. That's how I had to calm myself from overreacting. I had to be okay with, it was a good ride. Bro, you went to college on a full scholarship. You only played 1 year of football in high school and got a full ride. Nobody thought you would make it out the hood. Bro, that is a tough way to calm yourself down when you know this is going to be the end.
Give me a timeline from when you first got stabbed to that moment. Are we talking like 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes?
B-Rob, in my mind, I was like bleeding out for 25 minutes. So dude walks in at 2:55.
Okay.
I probably get stabbed like maybe 3:02, 3:03. And the paramedics showed up maybe 5 to 10 minutes after I got stabbed. By 3:30, I was in the ambulance.
Yeah.
Like almost at the hospital. Now in my mind,
right. It seemed like
it seemed
eternity.
like, bro, like I was there forever. Like I'm getting ticked off because I'm like, and I'm like, bro, you dying. How can you be mad at it? I'm like barking orders like, yo, let's go. Where is the paramedics?
So one of the things of your story, and I want to make sure we don't miss this, was when they finally get there, they put a tourniquet on a tourniquet.
Yeah.
And because of
that
COVID,
was in the yeah.
They put you
yeah.
in the ambulance, and you got to ride by yourself.
Yeah. Paramedics finally come. They put on a tourniquet. They wheel me out. When they wheel me out of the sanctuary, I mean, the lights, because it was still daytime. When I tell you there was, and obviously because the chief of police was there, it's about 15 cop cars. I'm being wheeled out. I don't even see my wife. They're like, we gotta go. They put me in the ambulance, and to your point, it was COVID. So they just like, yo, only the victim and the paramedics, ain't nobody else coming in here. The door closes, I hear 2 taps, and we boogie. And as we're leaving our church, I'm thinking, bro, my wife is seeing this.
And you never lost consciousness this whole time?
The entire time. Like, God wanted me to know every single detail so that when I tell the story, it will be so authentic and so vivid, like you cannot deny. And so he puts on the tourniquet, and these were the tourniquets that you crank. So it's like a crankshaft. He's cranking it, and he goes, Mr. Doss, tell me when this hurts. I look at him and I was like, bro, I don't give a freak about pain right now. Stop this bleeding. Like, what are you doing? Like, just go. So he's going, and I'm sitting there, and all this chaos is going on. And I said, God, how did this happen to me? I was just trying to help Pastor Sean. I'm dying. And the moment I said that, God plays like the end of the movie, the credits come down. He shows me a list of all the things that he has told me to do in my life that I procrastinated on. And it's playing like the credits at the end of the movie. And it's not huge stuff like cure this, or it's small stuff like, told you to call this person, but you were busy. I see what he told me to do and the reason why I didn't do it. And everything was procrastination. I had to work. I'm too busy. All these little small things. You could have took this kid. This kid had a birthday. You know, he has a single parent mom. Could have brought him some shoes. You decided to do. And it's playing. And I'm embarrassed. Because I know better.
Yeah.
How did I get to a spot? I didn't eat. B-Rob, I didn't know that I was procrastinating on so much stuff. And it's just playing, and there is no end. I'm like, I say, God, I promise if you save me from death, I will have a passion and a vigor for every second in life that will be unmatched on planet Earth.
Wow.
I said, but you got to get, like, you do this. And I promise you, I will go hard with everything, how to serve mankind, how to be a better father, how to be, I was a good dad. I was a great husband. I love my wife. But bro, there is so much more I could have done. And I just felt, with all the gifts that God has given me, I felt like me personally, I felt like I was humiliating him. Like, D, I've given you so much. Why are you not doing more? And it wasn't until I'm dying that I came to that recollection. I'm like, God, you save me from this. So we finally get into the emergency room, and I'm like, yo, I literally told them, I'm only 6'4". I don't know how much blood I have. Y'all gotta I need more blood. Mr. Doss, we're gonna take care of it. Now I'm getting antsy. I'm like, come on, man. Like, again, in my mind, I have been bleeding out for 3 hours.
Sure.
It was probably like maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah. Feels like an eternity.
Feels like an eternity. And they're cutting off my clothes, and they're like, okay, Mr. Doss, can you hear me? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Get me into surgery. Like, I literally said, stop talking me to death. Get me into surgery. And they're like, okay, Mr. Doss, we will. Is the right leg the only stab wound? I'm like, yes, it's the only stab wound. Let's go. I don't know how much longer I have. Then I hear the nurse on my left side. She goes, uh-oh, we have another puncture wound. I'm like, what? She's like, oh yeah, it's a puncture wound on his left quad. How I let this dude stab me twice in a church in Fairfax? And they start laughing. I'm not laughing. I am belligerent. I'm like, yo. So they're like, okay. Someone goes, hey, we got to bring his wife.
Get Kelly in here now.
Get Kelly. Because this dude, I'm angry. I'm like, yo, stop touching me. Get me in the surgery. They're like, Mr. Doss, we have to we have to see how much the damage is. I'm like, I'm bleeding everywhere. Again, I am completely conscious. My wife comes in. It's probably the worst thing that they could have done because my wife has the worst poker face in the history of.
I can't imagine.
So she's there and she's got on like the mask and everything, and she's like, and all I can see, of course, is her eyes because this is during COVID. And she's like, baby, you're going to be okay. And I could tell by her eyes. I laid back there and I was like, man, I'm dead. Like I'm dead. I'm like, yo, get me into surgery. Like, I need more blood. And the guy goes, Mr. Doss, we're giving you blood. And I look up, and they had these 2 vats that was filled with blood going into I'm like, when y'all do that? Like, I guess when I was flailing out, like they somehow, again, I did not feel anything the entire time.
That's amazing to me.
Because looking back and per my conversations with God, he's like, it wasn't important for you to feel pain because I wanted you to be aware of what was going on.
Love that.
Because when you tell the story, I didn't want you to be distracted and pass out. Like, I know now that it was never, I was never going to die. I didn't know that. But God was like, I just needed you to understand every detail. Man, I know what people were wearing.
Wow.
And I remember that finally, which again felt like 45 minutes after I got to the hospital, they was like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I remember I was leaning back and we were running. Like there was 3 guys, 1 up top and 2 on the side. We're running. There is nobody in the hallways. Like everyone knows what's going on. They're running. And I remember I saw like 1 light. I saw like 2 lights and then fade. I don't know what they gave me, but I was out. And then I woke up, bro, and I had 2 legs. And they said, the first thing I asked was, I said, am I still alive? And they laughed and they were smiling. I'm in ICU now. Now they told my wife that the surgery was only gonna be like an hour. Bro, it was like 3 hours. So imagine my wife, there's news cameras everywhere. She's gotta tell my mother. So she calls my mom and she's like, Dee Dee got stabbed at church. It's not good. My mother calls my sister, who's an EMT, EMS. She is having lunch with some of my childhood friends who I grew up with. She hears it. My mom calls her. She starts crying in the middle, and she tells her boyfriend, she's like, Derek, we gotta go. So my childhood friends, they see my sister, and they're like, we gotta go. So they're leaving, and these childhood friends are childhood friends from my part of life before Jesus. They're trying to find out who did this, and they're gonna kill everybody. Like, it's those type of people. And my sister's like, yo, Dee Dee is a different person. Y'all can't come to Northern Virginia like this. They're like, who did this? I mean, it was just so chaotic, man, but I was so thankful to be in ICU at Reston National Hospital. Shout out to them. Oh my goodness.
Well, let me ask you this,
Yeah.
because one, it's unbelievable what you went through, and to be awake and conscious during all
The
that, to be able to tell
whole
the
time.
story. I want to know, and I want our listeners to know, what you've done with this right now, moving forward, and how you're sharing it to be an inspiration.
Yeah. So what started this was actually, the exact time was, so this happened Saturday at about 3 o'clock was when all this went down on July 18th. So that Sunday morning at 4 o'clock, I remember my morphine wore off and I was completely woke. Still couldn't feel my leg. I was completely woke. And I started to cry, not because of the pain, not even because of the excitement of everything. I started to cry because I realized I almost died and I was going to have to answer for all the stuff I didn't do. It wasn't about like whether I was not going to heaven. Like I knew that. It was just, bro, but you got here, but you didn't bring anybody with you. So I'm crying, and a silhouette of a true silhouette of a man appears at the foot of my bed and says, "Are you done?" I'm crying and I'm like, what? Are you done? Am I done crying? Are you done? By now I know who that is. So I'm like, I wipe my eyes. I'm like, I guess so. And I'm like, God, why you let this happen to me? He goes, why not you? That's when I knew this was chess. It wasn't about me dying. Like there was a bigger purpose. I just said, wow. The image goes, now it's time to go fishing. Leaves. I sat there and laughed and I was just like, okay, now I get it. Now I'm like, okay, there's a reason. Not only am I going to get out of here, but God wants me to use this story to kind of inspire people to, one, not be me, not be complacent, right, with your life. Not, oh, you've arrived. Man, who are you bringing with you? Who are you serving? Like, we have all these resources. They were never designed for us to hoard them up for ourselves. Nah. So I was like, I can't wait to get out of the hospital. And through like all the rehab, it took like, I was in rehab for like 3 months. They had to like reteach kind of how to walk, how to run, just normal functions that I took for granted. I'm a former professional athlete. I can't walk now? I can't run now? Humbling. God was like, D, sometimes I allow bad things to happen to good people so that when they triumph over adversity, there is a story that people can't dispute, and that story will help other people overcome.
I love that.
I had to sacrifice somebody I knew that could handle this. You and Kelly were chosen. And that is the story that me and my wife have kind of inspired a lot of people, because my wife is not as extroverted as I am. And through this whole process, my wife had to clean my wounds. I remember when we were home, I'm like, Kelly, I can't look at it. I love you. You're called. I remember her looking herself in the mirror like, Lord, you got to help. Like, because she is, and she did a masterful job of like cleaning it out. What was also interesting, a month before this, I had saw the documentary of Alex Smith with his leg injury. So in my mind, when I'm in the hospital, I'm like, I told the nurse, I remember his name was Connor, like Connor. You know what happened to Alex Smith, right? He's like, yeah. I said, listen, if you allow bacteria to get in this wound, I'm going to beat the crap out of you. I said, so every hour you wake me up, circle where the blood is so that we can. So I'm like, I was so focused on, okay, now that I survived, I can't let this get infected. because I saw what happened to Alex Smith. And again, shout out to Alex Smith. At some point, me and you gonna have lunch. But I was just like, so all these things, it was just like, it was motivation. Like, I have to get, like, I know now at this moment, I have to get out and share this story with the world. And through all the rehab, God was like, okay, remember this part in the ambulance? Here's what I need you to know about this. Oh, remember this part? Like, all these little parts, he's like, okay, you're going to meet people who are X. There are certain things about life they're not going to understand until they hear this story. I've already chosen them for you. So while you're rehabbing, while you're at home, you can't do anything. You need to be ready to be able to prepare to articulate the story in a way where it pushes them into the destiny that I've called them to be. That's your job. Your job right now is to be the messenger. Some things about life and who I am, it's not going to make sense until they hear your story. Not that I'm not special, but God said, I can use this one.
I love that.
Because he's going to do it the right way. And so that has been my mentality, is to just encourage and inspire people, whether they're athletes, financial advisors, anybody. Like, everyone has a purpose. And sometimes we look at adversity as if it's an obstacle. For some of us to be great, adversity is the elevator. We can't get to the next level of the best version of ourselves, to go out here and to serve people the right way, to change the world, truly change the world, without adversity.
So true.
We need it. How do you respond to it? I could have been bitter. B-Rob, I told my wife, I said, man, that dude who stabbed me did me a solid. I ain't mad. Bro, I am a better version of myself because I went through all this.
That's a beautiful thing.
And I'm just like, man, imagine if we as a country, all the hurt that we have with people being abused, domestic violence, race stuff, what if instead of being bitter, you say, you know what, I'm going to be better. How can I use this message to bless someone else? How can I use this message to bless myself? If I can get past this and still be in my sane mind, man, I can do anything. If we took that mantra, America's different. The world is different. That's what I'm trying to do, brother.
Oh, we can stop the show right now. That was unbelievable. You know, people want, I think you said this, or Damon said this, people want the testimony, but they're not willing to
They ain't
go
willing to
through
do
the
the test, man. You can't
And
have one without the other.
I'm telling you, it's what you've gone through is unbelievable. And I think the last point I want to highlight is when people have a traumatic situation or a travesty that happens in their life, maybe like me, where I lost my father,
right?
You going through a horrific situation, it is that fork in the road. And some people, I'd say most people,
yep, absolutely,
probably choose the path of being bitter and why me, and you know, I'm kicking rocks and you know, I'm upset all the time, and I'm gonna take all that hate and all that anger, and that's what the world wants you to do right now. But you, my friend, have chose
absolutely
the righteous path and saying, look, I'm thankful for what happened to me. I don't think anybody that's ever been stabbed in the history of violence has said, hey, thank you for doing that, because now I'm a better person. I'm taking that hate and I'm taking that anger and situation, I'm going this direction with it to use it to inspire other people. For me, that is the genesis of this show. You represent exactly what we're trying to do. And man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on this show. I know people are going to take this message and move on the correct path and the right path because of you and Kelly and your experience. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Man, and thank you for having this amazing podcast, man, to highlight the ordinary people that's doing extraordinary stuff, man. That's amazing. This is going to change the world. So I appreciate you, man.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, kid.
All right, man.
Yes, sir.